I'm Zibby Owens, and this is Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. As a mom of 4 kids in New York City and a writer myself, I know all too well how short everyone is on time, so I'm here to help. I'm going to interview authors and writers of all types about their work, especially as it relates to parenting and family issues. Hopefully you can listen while doing 8 million other things and fall in love with these talented scribes and their fantastic books, essays, and songs like I have, plus get some tips on surviving parenthood. For more about me, you can check out my essays at zibbyowens.com. Today's episode has been sponsored by Once Upon a Farm. We know you'd love to feed your little one fresh food you make at home, but when there isn't time for shopping, chopping, and blending, we've got you covered with organic, cold-pressed blends as close to homemade as it gets. OnceUponAFarmOrganics.com. I'm super excited to be here today with Jon Henes. Jon is a partner in the restructuring group at law firm Kirkland & Ellis, where he has led some of the largest deals in the world. He has written extensively online for CNBC, Bloomberg, CNN, The Wall Street Journal, The Deal, Forbes, and Medium. He frequently appears on CNBC as a guest expert. Jon serves on the board of Caring Kind, the Heart of Alzheimer's Caregiving, Common Sense Media, the Foundation for Education on Honduras, and many other nonprofits. Jon has lectured at Harvard Business School, NYU, Wharton Business School, Wake Forest Law School, and Cardozo Law School, where he is an adjunct professor. He lives in Manhattan with his wife and 5 children. His series of essays about coping with his mother's Alzheimer's disease are absolutely brilliant. So welcome to Jon.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So Jon, you are an amazingly prolific writer. Your writing style is crisp, clear, and relatable. You even made me understand the top 5 reasons why the debt ceiling might not be raised, or at least I now have a grasp on the issue, from 2011 in a whole new way. How did you learn to write so well, and when did you start writing for publications?
Well, I don't know if I write so well, but I started writing for publications back when the financial world exploded. A guy named John Wald, who used to run CNBC at that time, was somebody I knew, and he reached out to me and said, "We have nobody here who truly understands bankruptcy. Can you write something? I'm trying not to write it like a lawyer, and send it to me and let me see, and if I like it, I'll post it." So I wrote it, and he said, "Oh, this doesn't look like how a lawyer would write something," and it just kind of led from there. So I never had to submit things. I would just hand them over to CNBC, and they would post them. And I found that I like to write, and I can write very quickly. So I would have a few minutes in the day and would have some idea and would write it, and that's how it started with CNBC and Bloomberg and those types of organizations.
And so you never even had to pitch. People were just coming after you.
Yeah, I don't even know if they were chasing me. I just it became very easy to just go onto their blogs and put things on there.
That's great.
Yeah, it was fun.
Awesome. So while you're this amazing writer about all sorts of legal and business issues and really help, distill the essence into something very simple for everyone to understand, I really wanted you on this show to talk about your series of essays on Medium about your beautiful mother, Karen, now age 71, who is living with Alzheimer's. In your piece from March 2016 called My Mom's Vacant Eyes Living with Alzheimer's Disease, I'm going to quote if that's okay, you wrote, "Yesterday on my birthday, I visited my mom. For the past 10 years, my mom has been living with Alzheimer's disease. She is not alone. More than 5 million Americans live with the insidious carnivorous disease, which attacks their brains and steals their memories. The disease is not merciful. It does not impose a quick death sentence. Instead, it sadistically devastates its victims, from strong, thoughtful, compassionate people to empty, distorted images of their former selves. It's horrifying and heartbreaking to watch. It's not like watching a car crash in slow motion. It's actually watching the person you love disappear slowly, one memory at a time, before your very eyes." I'm literally about to start crying again. This is heartbreaking and so beautifully written. How did you switch gears from professional writing and start writing about your mom?
So I think Alzheimer's is an amazingly difficult disease to grasp, and everybody deals with it differently, and for a very long time I just didn't deal with it. And one day, actually my son was asking me some questions. This is when he was obviously younger, and I wrote a letter to my mom, and I decided I was going to take my son with me because he wanted to see her and read it to her. And then after I read it, I showed it to a couple of people, and people said, you should try to publish this. So then I kind of ran around knowing nothing about publishing and asking people, some reporters that I knew and things, where should I put this? Where should I publish it? somebody mentioned Medium to me, so I just did it on Medium, and I sent it around. Maybe I posted it on Facebook. I can't remember 100% how I got it out there. And then it just kind of picked up, and I don't know, 5,000 or 6,000 people read it.
Oh my gosh!
But more importantly, I started getting calls and emails from people, friends and others, who said, "Hey, I'm kind of going through the same thing. I don't really know how to deal with it. Reading this helped a little bit. To see somebody else going through it as well. But everybody had a similar story, but their own unique story." But on writing it, it just kind of helped me cope, because I was not reaching out to other people and talking about it. I wasn't letting people know about it. And then when I wrote this and I got the response in terms of, hey, this is helping me, then I thought, maybe I'll write a little bit more.
That's great. Were there some things that you found that you had been struggling with and not talking about that other people specifically had been struggling with?
Yeah, the thing about Alzheimer's disease is that it doesn't happen all at once. It's not like you wake up one morning and you find out that your loved one doesn't remember anything. Mm-hmm. It's very slow. And every family deals with it, and every person deals with it differently. So in my family, my father started to see differences in my mom. And she was a financial planner. Her partner saw differences in my mom. And then they raised them with her, and she kind of got defensive and, no, that's not true. I'm not forgetting things.
Differences like what? Like what's an example?
So my mother went back to school to get her MBA and then became a financial planner. And my mother is the type of person who connected with everybody. She always looked for a connection. People loved being around her because she was incredibly caring and just looked for the good in people. Mm-hmm. And when she was a financial planner, her clients loved her because she was trustworthy and honorable and good at what she did. And then she would just forget things. She wouldn't call people back, which she always called people back. And so people would say, we're not hearing from Karen. Like, why is Karen not getting back to us? Or, this financial report that we were supposed to get because we needed it for our taxes, she didn't get it to us. So it was things like that. And they would ask her about it, and since her memory was going, she would say, that's not true. Of course I'm calling people back. I always call people back. So it was little things at first. And then my dad is the type of person, he's a veterinarian. He's, so he's like his medical scientist hat on. He's like, there's something wrong. We need to find out what's wrong. And so he ran around, going to different experts and hospitals to try to find out what was going on. But in the meantime, for me and for my wife, we were hearing little bits and pieces of this, and none of it made sense because it was my mom. Of course, there's nothing wrong with my mom. The genes in our family are amazing. Her grandmother lived to be 105. Her great aunt lived to be 107. She was as healthy as can be.
In the family.
No Alzheimer's. My grandfather, her father, late in his life, developed it, but it was in his 80s, okay. Right? And it was very quick. He got Alzheimer's and died within a few months, okay. But he was in his 80s, so there was no early 60 years old having Alzheimer's. So for our family, my dad's running around trying to figure out what's going on. I'm sitting there saying, wait, this has got to be stress related because my dad had sold his veterinary practice, so that was like a whole new thing for them. My mother's father had died, her mother was sick. She was kind of the breadwinner now for the family. So I said, okay, this is just all stress related, right? She's fine. She doesn't have Alzheimer's disease. It's crazy. And the rest of the family, her brothers, didn't believe it either. So it became actually a thing, for lack of a better word, where people were like, to my dad, you're crazy, right? She's fine. My mother being like, I don't have this. I'm fine. Me not wanting her to have it, so not wanting to believe it. And as all of this is going on, and this is all happening over a couple of years, it does kind of pushes family members apart. Like my father and my mother's youngest brother don't talk at all anymore.
Really?
And they were very close for, 50, however many years.
There wasn't any sort of indication when he turned out to be right?
No. I still think they don't want to believe that it's all true. And so
really?
He
Even
just,
now? Oh
yes.
my gosh.
People run away. It's a very scary thing, I know, as we were preparing for this. Mm-hmm. people start thinking, well, wait a second, what if it happens to me?
Right.
So it gets very scary. So people want to run away from that sometimes, right? Some people run towards it, some people run away from it. But what I found when I wrote that letter to my mom and published it, one friend came to me and said, I want to talk to you very, very confidentially. So I'll do that confidentially now. And said, my father has Alzheimer's disease. My mother will not allow anybody to know. So she hides him now from everybody. But he was a very prominent person, got fired from his job, all because of the Alzheimer's disease related things, but nobody knew he had it. So people thought, oh, he's just fallen down on the job. Maybe he has some other problem, who knows, substance abuse, what could it be? But he said to me, I'm struggling because I want to go get help. My mother doesn't, she's embarrassed by it. So I don't know what to do. And that, I think a lot of families go through.
That's so interesting. I never would have thought that.
Yeah, it's a crazy, crazy thing. Most people, I'm like this. I've never, when I wrote the letter to my mom, people were like, we had no idea that your mom even was going through this.
People
right?
who knew her? Or just people who knew you? Yeah.
Right, because I never talked about it. I still don't really talk about it. This is as much talking about it as I've done in a long time.
What was it like then? I've seen Still Alice, the movie about Alzheimer's, which I never stopped thinking about. But to see your mom sort of, let me go back to, there was a quote you wrote in one of your pieces when she didn't recognize you. Hold on, let me find it. It was from Thanksgiving. Well, no, of course I can't find it. But it was from Thanksgiving, and you were saying, how can I be thankful when, how can I be thankful when I said to my mom, I am Jon, your son, and she smiled at me and responded, I think maybe I do know you, but I don't know how. What is that like? It's so devastating to even read it, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to just cry? I would feel like I would just burst into tears.
Yeah, it's devastating. You sit there and say, okay, this is my mother.
Right.
But that's when I think the struggle, and I think I've come, not full circle, 180, I don't know what the exact degree is. My initial reaction was, I can't do this, right? She's already gone. She's not there anymore. So why am I dealing with this? I'm kind of now at the point where I've said, okay, I need to go see her. Maybe it's for me, maybe it's for her. I don't know who it's for, but I need to go and at least spend some time with her.
And you stopped seeing her for a while, right?
Yeah, I haven't seen her probably for, I don't know how long, 6 months maybe now, And it's not, it hasn't been a conscious thing. It hasn't been, I'm not going. It's been much more, I'm just incredibly busy. I've got 5 kids, I'm running around, I've got work. So, when do I have time to jump in the car and drive to Westchester to see my mom? Right? Yeah. I just don't have time. I can always make that excuse, and it's not a, conscious, I'm making that excuse, I don't want to go. It's just, but at the same time, anybody else in the world could look at that and say, wait, you mean you can't jump in a car and drive 45 minutes to go see your mom? Of course you could. But it's a hard thing. And now, she's past that. She can't really speak at all. So there's it's not going to be, hey, do you remember me? Do you know who I am? Oh, I think I recognize you. It would be, do you know who I am? And she, her body's tightening up. She clenches her jaw. The doctor said she's going to break her jaw because she grinds her teeth so hard. I just saw a friend of mine who, he did just come up, I should say a friend of mine, but I haven't seen him for years. I ran into him. And he came over and said, oh, I don't know if you know about my mom has Alzheimer's. He said she's in a nursing home, and they just called to say she forgot how to eat, right? And that's what happens. If the person with Alzheimer's lives long enough, their whole body forgets everything. So at the end, the way they die is they forget how to swallow, and that's it. And they get some tubes to feed them until they die. It's a terrible thing.
Oh, my God. It's terrible.
It's horrible.
So what happened? You wrote in one of your essays that you were at in the Jewish quarter in Italy, right?
Yes.
And it made you realize that you wanted to reconnect with your mom and all her love of Italian language and everything. Tell me about what happened there.
So my wife and I just went to Italy, and we were in Rome, and we went to the Jewish quarter. And the second we walked into the Jewish quarter, I don't know if you've been there, but it's very small. My mother was with me right away, because that is where she would have gone first.
Are you
she
Italian?
Always did.
Are you Italian?
No, Jewish. Jewish, right? So
there are Italian Jews.
There are Italian Jews. I don't think we're Italian Jews. But, so she would, anytime she would go anywhere, when she would come back, there'd be some discussion about some synagogue, right? It could be anywhere in the world that she'd go. So when we walked in, I was like, if she was here right now, between, the Hebrew letters everywhere to the mandel bread, which my great grandmother used to make, to just having this like small group of people, this small group of Jewish people in this, incredibly Christian country, she would have just been all over that and loved it. And so my wife and I have been talking for a while. My wife's been pushing me to go see my mother, which I appreciate, and she's right about it. But at that moment, I was like, okay, she's with me. And it also, one of the things I've written about, I guess, and maybe talked about a little bit, I was at a funeral, this is now years ago, and the a grandfather died. And we were at Central Synagogue for the funeral, and obviously it was incredibly sad, right? Because funerals are terribly sad, and somebody that everybody loved so much died.
Right.
And we sat there, and the kids got up, the grandkids got up, and they talked about this man and how much they loved him and how much he meant to them. And they told all these stories about how funny he was, how incredible he was in this way. Business colleagues got up, friends got up, and just you saw this whole picture of this person and their whole life. And I was sitting there, and while I was it was like sad and felt terribly for the family, then I watched everybody come together for this family, right? And so you had, 500 people, however many people were there, that all were there to celebrate this man and to be there for this family. And then I realized that with Alzheimer's disease, you don't have that. Like I've said this to my wife, when my mother finally physically dies, I'm not sure there'll be anybody at the funeral, right?
Oh, I'm sure that's not true.
Well, I'm not sure how many people really will be there, because so many people have left and gone on with their lives. Like, she's gone to so many people. It's like, it's as if, even for me, it's as if she died years ago. And then do you remember all the stories, right? Because they're not like fresh in your mind anymore. It's almost like talking about, somebody who died years ago. And so, but with Alzheimer's, you see that people, how long can you expect, somebody's friend to sit around, and kind of while this person's disappearing to just be there? And my father has said that too, that, when she first got diagnosed with Alzheimer's, there were so many friends around. And then one at a time, they would kind of go off. And my dad, he I don't know if he 100% understood it. He'd be like, this doesn't seem fair. Everybody's leaving me. I've got this to myself. I would sit there and be like, Dad, what are they going to do? Like, they have their own lives, their own things to go to. They can't just sit around and watch Mom. But it's a very difficult thing. But when I was sitting in the Jewish quarter, I think something that I was like, okay, she may be gone, but as if she has already died, she's always going to be with me.
Yeah.
Right. And so as we were sitting there walking through the Jewish quarter talking about her, that's how you, I guess, keep people alive, I guess.
There should be some, like the process of mourning, right? It starts so much earlier for you, and yet you can't get the emotional, like there's so many societal things where people gather together at this funeral, and yet you miss that.
That's
Instead,
right.
You're like sort of silently suffering, and it feel so lonely in a way to be mourning the loss of a person slowly versus.
Exactly. And it's not a real mourning, right? Because
they're still there.
They're still there. So
but it's still the mourning. it's still losing like the soul of somebody, right? The soul is slipping away.
100%. So you don't know when it happens, right? Like it's this thing that where you're watching, right? The person disappear.
Yeah.
And one day you're like, oh wait, that person's now gone, but you didn't know when. I've said this to my wife. I've said, I almost feel like if somebody gets diagnosed with Alzheimer's, you should go have like a memorial service right then. Let the person be there. Do something like so everybody can come around, because then it's just a slow, usually slow, especially if it hits early in somebody's life, just like this slow decline.
I think they should have memorial services for everybody while they're alive. And
that'd be nice, right?
Why not hear all the good stories? My grandmother, who's 95, keeps being like, "All right, read me your speech. Let me hear it."
Right, I want to.
And I'm like, I'm not ready to write it yet. And she's like, "Come on, I don't want to miss it. Let me read it now."
I get that.
I get it too.
Yeah.
It's like. So if you could go back in time, like 15 years ago, say, before when your mom and you had just this great relationship and whatever, and would you handle things any differently? Would you tell her would you be a different type of son? Would you tell her what was to come? How would you do anything differently?
I don't know if I'd do anything different with my mom. I mean, my mother and I were incredibly close my whole life. I mean, she was definitely, she was my confidant, and she was
Were you the oldest? Are you the only?
I'm the oldest. I have a sister who's
right.
8.5 years younger than I am.
Okay.
My mother we were incredibly close, and we look a lot alike, and we're very similar in a lot of ways. So I'm not sure I would do. I hope I was a good son to her. I think I was. I think I do different things now since she got Alzheimer's disease, but I do think that I think having a conversation with the one thing maybe I would have done is to say, what would you really want? And this is going to sound really horrible.
It's okay.
But this is from my perspective. If somebody told me today, you have Alzheimer's disease now, okay, now, like not you're going to have it in 20 years, but you have it now, and you're just going to start forgetting everything, and everything's going to go away, and your body's going to shut down. I really do think I would say, okay, at some point, you've got to find a way just to for everybody, for me, for you, for the family, for friends, just let me die. Find a way to let that happen.
Yeah.
Because, her life now there is no life. And my father, I mean, he is, it took him a long time. It was incredibly hard on him, and he went and got help early on. But he now has another life, and he's doing a lot of things. He's still taking care of her. She's still living at home. He's still there. But that's so hard for him, and so hard for him to watch it all. And for me, for my sister, I mean, my kids, my oldest two kids, they know her. They knew her because she was still kind of around in there when they were little. But my three youngest, they talk about her a little bit, but they have no idea. And we don't bring them there because I don't know what.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what it would even mean to them. So I don't think I would say anything. I don't think I would do anything different. I mean, I'm sure there were little things here and there I would do differently, looking back. But I do think it's more of how do you deal with it moving forward.
So I took that. I think I mentioned to you. I took that 23andMe test that says I'm at higher risk for Alzheimer's later in life, and I have Alzheimer's in my family. Knowing that, in my head at least, I've been like, well, let's say my risk is higher when I'm 75, right? And now I'm almost 42. So what's that, I have 33 good years? That's 33 Christmas vacations. Where should I go? Do you know what I mean? Work backwards.
Yeah.
Because after that, it's kind of not to say it will definitely happen. And, but I think for so many people, it's a possibility out there. And it just maybe helps live life better now. I mean, whether or not it's 75 obviously any of us could get hit by a car tomorrow, and everyone has their expiration date at some point.
Yes.
How do you live life today knowing that either this type of thing is coming or just something is coming? How do you keep that in every day and sort of be more present or mindful or whatever?
For me, I think I try not to think about what would happen if I or somebody else got Alzheimer's disease, because to your point, you could get hit by a car tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So I do think you just got to live life to the fullest. I do think, though, when you think about how many, life expectancy is getting longer, right? So we're seeing more and more, people getting Alzheimer's disease. I think some of that's from longevity. There's other people that are talking about all the different drugs people take now, not to help them sleep or anxiety could also have an impact. But I think that focusing on, I know, for everybody, I think that for trying to find a cure, right, at the end of the day is so important. And if you look at how much money the federal government spends on diseases, and Alzheimer's is so small, which to me is crazy, because all diseases are bad, and if we could have a cure for every disease, that would be amazing. But so many people are impacted. So, I don't know how many it is exactly today, but let's say it's 5 million people with Alzheimer's. Yeah. If you think about how many other people are impacted by that, their families and everything else, you could be talking about 20, 30, 40 million people. But I think, obviously, everybody should live life to their fullest and, enjoy every moment, because you never know when it's going to end. But but that goes for not just us. It goes for, us looking at, because who knows if somebody that we love gets it.
That's true, yeah.
I watched, with my mother, just watching that happen.
I'm so sorry.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
No, it's just so awful. I'm sorry you have had to go through this. And the good that's come out of it is your ability to share so honestly and openly with so many people in the writing. And do you have any other aspirations with your writing? I think this would be such a beautiful memoir.
I appreciate it. So I'll say this, 2 things on that. The way that I generally write is I just, like the thing I wrote about my mother in the Jewish quarter, it came to me. I have my phone. I go onto my notes while I'm sitting in the car, like going to the next, going to the Coliseum or whatever, and I just type it out and I write it and I send it to Pam, my wife. She reads it and then I post it, right? So it's generally just like inspirational, right? Something inspires me and then I write something quickly. But I've always thought about publishing it if I really thought it would help people. And I can't help it. This is just my own, personality. I sit there and say, yeah, I wrote something and maybe it helps somebody, but is it really that meaningful, right? So I do think about writing it and putting it together. I have no idea how I would do that, but.
Well, I think connecting with people and making people feel less alone in whatever journey they're on always is helpful. I mean, that's sort of, I don't know, that's like connecting.
I think that's right.
I mean, I haven't even gone through this yet, and I feel like I was so personally moved by what you wrote, and if I were actually... Anyway, I think you should keep it up. It's beautiful. I just want to read one more passage that you wrote to close. It was the same essay that I started by reading, the one about my mom's vacant eyes. You wrote, I turned from the picture... you had been looking at a picture of your mom back when she was fully present. I turned from the picture and walked back to my mom. I smiled at her and looked into her eyes. They were vacant. Behind her eyes is a disease slowly eating away at her brain, although the ferocity with which the disease is acting is now increasing in strength and speed. I so wanted to connect with her right then. It was my birthday, and if only for one moment I wanted my mom back. I wanted her to know how much I love her and how much I appreciate everything she did for me. I wanted her to know how much I miss her and how so often I would do anything just for a hug from her or to hear her amazing words of wisdom and understanding. But as I stood there, smiling at her and looking into her eyes, it was clear that my mom left some time ago. She was no longer there behind those vacant eyes. She no longer lives in that frail human frame that topples over. She no longer lives behind those eyes that stare straight ahead. Instead, she lives within all of those people who she connected with and loved. Instead, she lives within me. Oh my God, it's so pretty. I mean, it's just so beautiful. Anyway,
thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for this.
Thanks for sharing with listeners.
Thank you.
Everything. Thanks, Jon.